our next up, we have Chaitra Kulkarni from Texas Tech University as well, talking about women in cyber infrastructure, using positive deviance strategies for motivating new generation of CI women.
So thank you again for providing us the opportunity to just be here and share what we are working on. I'm working on women in cyber infrastructure, a part of like Dr. Kirky's group, where we are kind of using the data from the transcripts that they have collected for like a couple of projects for cyber infrastructure capacity and diffusion, and how we can use this concept to do a greater good. So just a little bit about me. I'm a first-year PhD student in the College of Media and Communication at Texas Tech. And my background is, my bachelor's is in computer science, and my master's is in communication studies. And my interests basically are in health and organizational communication, diffusion of things on social media and new innovations, and then exploration of the social science, or more of a human side of computation. So like I said, I'm looking at women in cyber infrastructure and basically looking at the positive deviance strategies for motivating a new generation of CI women. And on this project, I'm working with Alex, Cassie, and Sayo, all of whom you have heard from either yesterday or today. So we're just kind of working with the similar data set, but looking at different things and how we can use this data set to look at how cyber infrastructure can work, the internal, external communication, the opinion leaders, and now I'm like looking specifically at like women in cyber infrastructure, so just going a little narrower in opinion leaders and influencers. So why we wanted to do this study, basically, so current literature talks about how women represent about 46% of workforce, but only 19% are currently working in the STEM workforce. And also another paper that I was reading at was talking about how women are lesser inclined to start their like college degree with more STEM fields, or even if they start, they eventually like STEM out to other fields. So it's important for them to kind of see the career, the focus that they can go on when they are studying in a STEM degree or a STEM field. And similar statistics are also seen in cyber infrastructure, which is a more technologically inclined field. So about 18% of women are currently in the cyber infrastructure field, which was generated from an NSF 2020 report. So Alex and Cassie talked a lot about cyber infrastructure. I'm not going to go deeper into that, but just a little preview of why we are doing this, and what is like the importance of diffusion of innovations theory in our study for this particular topic. So like Cassie said, it's like a complex innovation, consists of complex technologies, maybe data sets, storage, visualization technologies, simulations, and all of those different things that actually provide researchers or people who want to use the big data and study those data and analyze that kind of data. So providing the advanced computing capabilities, which is not otherwise possible if cyber infrastructure did not exist. So Dr. Kirky in his 2015 NSF proposal also mentioned about how cyber infrastructure is a multidimensional innovation, which consists of like ideas, objects, and behaviors, which is what kind of Rogers in his diffusion of innovations theory was pointing at. So in this study, we are kind of looking at the later part of it, which is the behaviors and how that can like influence people to adopt those behaviors, and what strategies we can use for doing that. And one thing that came up a lot in while we were analyzing these transcripts is that people did talk about how great technologies are, and that can lead to more innovations and more research capabilities, but also they mentioned that a supercomputer wouldn't be a supercomputer without people who are driving it. So it is also important for like thinking about the human part of it, or the people who are actually working in cyber infrastructure, and what is actually helping this field to progress and can progress in the future as well. So we're kind of focusing on the human part of cyber infrastructure. So challenges and why we really wanted to do this study, I kind of already hinted at what was missing in the literature. But again, there is a stereotype that still exists that STEM field is more suitable for men. One of the reasons might be because like missing role models of women role models in the field of cyber infrastructure. So young women or girls who are in high school or college cannot really visualize what their future might be in such fields. So it is important for them to learn by examples to see that these women have taken this path and succeeded in this. So it is super important to kind of diffuse that kind of idea or behavior within like the larger society. So we are with this study trying to fill the gap of missing stories of women in CI and kind of their challenges or even rewards of navigating in this cyber infrastructure field, which is said to be highly male dominated. So what we are doing here is we are actually driving from the positive deviance or outliers approach that is used by a lot of researchers to do societal good, or something that can be used to like teach others by example. So basically, positive deviance approach is identifying individuals within the communities or groups where they have like shown or displayed uncommon behaviors and strategies that have enabled them to find better solutions for the existing problems or to make the society better. So if we want to look at positive deviance example, especially like for women empowerment. Recently in 2018, Palestinian women entrepreneurs took it upon themselves to make them like financially independent and kind of work towards financial inequality problems. So what they did was they took examples from Palestinian women who were actually like financially independent and had their independent sources of income. And then they kind of disseminated that within the society to motivate more women entrepreneurs. So just using their strategies, what they were doing, and motivating others to implement those strategies or behaviors is what drove them to disseminate that within the society and that kind of behavior. And then in CI, we can also use this strategy to motivate others just by providing examples and like take the less taken path and show them how they have succeeded. So it's easier to adopt when you have those examples and if you have observed those behaviors with others. So what we did here is what Cassie and Alex mentioned as well. We looked at the in-depth semi-structured interviews that were originally collected for studying about organizational capacity and cyber infrastructure diffusion. And from the 132 total participants, there were 24 who were women. So we kind of analyzed those for the study of this data. And even within the pool of our participants, we found that there were about 18% of women in the pool of participants. So it kind of stands with the statistics that NSF noted in their report as well. So Cassie kind of told us about how grounded theory works. So we are also using grounded theory for this paper as well, just looking at how the themes emerge and if they are reoccurring and kind of putting them into categories and finding relationships between them to drive our study was what went into this methodological approach. So we did find some preliminary results and themes that were generated while looking at the data. The first one was when the women were first exposed to cyber infrastructure, just looking at the motivations that motivated them to enter this field, or were there some influencers like Cassie and Alex talked about, or were they self-driven to get into this field? So one of the user from Utah mentioned about how she got involved with during her undergrad because a professor or the lab she was involved in was working with cyber infrastructures, computational chemistry and all of that things, and that was their first exposure to CI. Another one mentioned about being self-driven and just enjoying working with people and computers and like knowing more or learning more about this field in general. And one of them, administrator from Arizona, also mentioned about how they were exposed to it when they were working on their previous jobs. So just like by chance they got introduced to it, and then in the current job they were also like serving as a cyber infrastructure administrator. So just getting into it by chance, but eventually liking it and continuing being in this field was the theme that kind of emerged during our data analysis. The second theme that emerged was their current work profile and organizational support. So basically what position they're working at and what were the things that the organization provided for them to keep continuing doing this work instead of moving to another field can also be one of the things that we can disseminate and bring in or reel in more young women in CI. So one of the interesting things that we found was most of them mentioned about being administrators who are kind of the leaders in cyber infrastructure, who either drive a project or a data center or something like that. So most of them were working or in some point in their life worked as administrators. So I think it would be also interesting to get those stories out there to people and just tell them that they can actually reach leadership position, like women are working as leaders in CI. So that can be super interesting. And then others mentioned about being scientist or developer technologies or pure users of CI. So some of these themes, we need to go back in and look at that to see what else the results say and what we can do to disseminate this information externally to other people. And then one of them who was a liaison or educator mentioned that her organization provided her with everything like office space, paying good salary, and even computer use and even health benefits that kind of helped her stay in the position where she's at. So just organizational support was also a theme that emerged during the study. The third theme was being motivators of new CI generation. So training new students and collaborating with others was the theme that we found. And one of them mentioned about how the student which came into her lab wasn't sure if she was gonna be able to work on this project with computation. And she just said, like, come on, you're good with theory, you got this, you can work it out. And eventually that person went in and actually incorporated some of the data science stuff in her dissertation and went on to do more with computation. So just being motivator in that way also was the theme that emerged from this study. And then one of them mentioned about how introducing computation or basically this field to not just women, but students in general early in their life, so maybe in high school or college, can actually help them to view or ensure that they have a future with research and CI in general. And then the last theme that we found was basically their career trajectory and how they have the experience working with CI in general. So one of them talked about like, when they were hired, it was 5 of us, and then 5 years later, I was the last one standing. So there was something that went into her being the only one who reached till the end, or is still working in CI. So that might be another aspect to explore more in the future. And then another administrator from Arizona mentioned about how she's been working on different NSF-funded projects for over 10 years, and she just like enjoyed doing that. So she's still working in the field. So just looking at their trajectories can also help us disseminate the stories within the young women and also motivate them to come into this field. So a little bit of practical implications of what we want to achieve with this study. So currently institutions like higher education or even NSF are taking efforts to encourage more women in STEM and computing. There are workshops for women in STEM or women in HPC, and that's happening right now. But we did think that it is important for these stories to be also like diffused in a larger community, in a larger society, and that's what we want to kind of achieve with this project. And using a positive deviation approach can help disseminate these stories amongst people and reel in more young women within cyber infrastructure if they can envision the path or the career they can take in the CI field. And then we would be able to hopefully recommend some strategies for combating unequal representation of women in CI and encourage a new generation of CI women. And this is all we have. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll take any and all of your questions.
Yeah, Chaitra, very nice presentation. I really like this kind of topics because it's, so I like that it's provoking, and a lot of people, they are not paying attention on these issues, even though we see a lot of movement around that. So one question that I have is, recently I've been looking into a lot of these BPC plans, from the departments that they have. And even though they talk about the minorities, they talk about the women, but I don't see much of CI on these BPC plans. Mostly it is telling just, we need to motivate students to join the graduate program, or like motivate more, women, girls to try to join the STEM part. But I don't see nothing specific going into that direction, say how you can try to put a little bit of CI into the program, or how you could develop, some interest into the CI. So do you see yourselves also trying to look into these kind of approach that people are developing, and try to understand, what are the good results and what it's missing, and try to provide some information there?
Yeah, that's a great question and a great point. So we did kind of actually just work off of the things we had right now, and like Alex mentioned, it wasn't really possible to go to these workshops and kind of get more data because of like COVID. But yeah, that's a great point. People like you mentioned, there's not much that institutions are doing, maybe especially regarding cyber infrastructure. It's more like STEM in general, but not cyber infrastructure. So it'll be fascinating to kind of look at that particular aspect and see if the strategies that is working for like general STEM fields would work for cyber infrastructure as well. And if we can use those strategies and reel in more people, not just women, but even like men into cyber infrastructure. So that would be a great idea to kind of contrast and compare and see what would work for cyber infrastructure especially. Great point.